Well, welcome everyone. Today is April 1st, no fooling. Today is the 1st of April, and I still think that this March may have been one of the longer Marches that we've ever encountered, and March is never really a short month. But we are into April now, the signs of spring, right? And this is our Daily Connections call. Today's topic is on space for grief, giving space for grief. And it was really interesting. I had chosen this topic several days ago. That was my planned topic for today, which seems like a crazy topic for April Fool's Day, right? But no, space for grief is today's topic. And then the first post that I read when it was time for my sort of morning reading what's out on Harvard Business Review and the other things, the first one I read this morning was a Harvard Business Review article about, I think the title of it was "That Discomfort You're Feeling is Grief." And I got to thinking about grief and how we don't talk about it as much as perhaps we should. And right now, in the environment that we're in, I think we need to be talking about grief, and I think we need to be educating ourselves on it a little bit and being aware of what's going on. So today is space to grieve. It may be that you need space to grieve. It may be that your family members need space to grieve. It may be that your colleagues or your employees need space to grieve. It could be anywhere around you. And so I want to approach this from a couple of different angles. From a grief perspective, the exposure that I have to this and the perspective that I bring to the table is the research that I've done on the change management topic. So I teach a lot of classes on change management. And when we go through change, we often experience a letting go process that feels a lot like grief. For years in the human resources space, Elizabeth Kubler-Ross's method of change management, where the statement was all change is like a death. That was kind of our default for maybe 20 years in the HR industry. We just talked about all change is like a death. And so the exposure to grief from that perspective, if you are not familiar with grief and it's something that you want to learn or become more familiar with, I do recommend Elizabeth Kubler-Ross. Her text on death and dying is still one of the leading authoritative best texts out there to really understand the process. And you can Google and find lots of other resources available that are derived from hers. But one of the things that we know is that when we talk about change, we have to let go of what was in order to move on to what is. And that letting go is often a grieving period. So as we talk about space to grieve, when I teach the change management curriculum, I teach that we have to allow for that grief, right? We have to allow for letting go and the sadness that comes and the grief stages that go with letting go. And not everybody goes through them in the same order, and they're not linear, and not everybody goes through exactly every stage for the same amount of time, right? They're all different. But definitely there are some things to be aware of. The sort of the five universal or the standards that have been adopted is denial is a stage of grief. And that's well, it's not going to happen. It's not going to happen to me. It won't happen here. Iowans will be fine, right? It's this, and then it moves even to the phrase, this can't be happening. So not even, this isn't going to happen, but this can't be happening. That denial, that sort of refusal to accept what's going on. There's anger, which manifests itself in a variety of different ways, but it's like, this is happening and I'm angry about it. I'm mad. I'm hostile. I'm frustrated. I have actively negative emotions associated with that. And then there's bargaining. So bargaining is the stage where we, in a change management situation, it's where an employee might come to you and say, well, I'll keep doing it the old way for now. I don't have to go the new way, right? I can just keep doing this. What can I, I'll work extra on Mondays, or I'll go ahead and keep doing the old way. And I'll do this to make up for it. And that bargaining is kind of a way to approach, I'll play along, I'll do something if I can control the rules, right? If I have some say in it, it's about trying to get control again. And then there is a stage of depression, which is often passive, it's inactive, it's resignation, you hear sadness, you hear people who have trouble getting out of bed. Think about your own phrases around this. They're phrases like, I'd rather just stay in bed and get up when it's June, or things along those lines. And then there's acceptance, which is the movement to, it's okay. We can deal with this. We can move on. This is okay. And then the Harvard Business Review article this morning brought in a sixth stage, which I thought was really interesting, around meaning. And it's really about how do I find meaning from this? How does this experience that I went through, how does it add meaning to my life now? And what do I do with that? So as you think about those stages, and I don't in any way pretend to be the expert on this, I'm offering some nuggets based on things that I know and the research that I've done in my own personal experiences. But where I'm going to offer the kind of the flip side is, well, what do you do about this? So I'm not an expert on grief stages, but on human interaction and on helping each other and on giving space for grief, that's where I want to offer some tips. I think if you encounter someone else that is going through the grief stages and you're recognizing that that's what they're doing, they're grieving that the loss of how easy it was to do work before, or they're grieving the loss, if they're a small business owner, they're grieving the loss of stability. If they're a small business owner who's been owning a business for a lot of years, they're grieving the loss of their savings, their life savings that now is being evaporated and used up in managing or maintaining the business and trying to keep it alive. They may be grieving the loss of interactions with their colleagues on a day-to-day basis. They may be grieving the loss of their senior year. They may be grieving the loss of being present at their kids' graduation, or at a wedding, or at the birth of a new baby, right? That even moments that we're supposed to have joy may have grief associated with them. And I think when you encounter someone expressing grief, I think one of the things we need to do, and that's why that was the title of today's session, Space to Grieve, is I think we've got to create safe spaces. And in the workplace and among our friendships and in our families, I think we need to create safe spaces where it's okay to grieve, where it's okay to say, hey, I'm human and I'm sad, or I'm human and I'm angry, or I want to live in denial for a couple of hours. Leave me alone and let me just, play. I don't even know what we're playing on games anymore these days. But create that safe space where it's okay to be human and it's okay to grieve, and you've acknowledged that. If you've got someone around you who is grieving, I beg you to listen. I beg you not to solve. I beg you to listen. Listen, just let them get it out. Let them, I heard someone use the phrase ugly cry. Let them ugly cry if they need to ugly cry. Let them just listen and be patient while they get through this. And I think in our colleagues and in our collegial spaces, and even in our families and our collective living spaces, I think we need to give grace that stuff takes a little bit longer. When you're grieving, it takes longer to process emotions. It takes longer to take action. It takes longer to do stuff. It takes longer to process and deal with information. Everything just moves a little slower. It's like going through slow motion. And if any one of us had just been to a funeral of someone that we loved, everyone around us would give us space and say, oh, it just takes time. And you need a little extra time. That's fine. Well, we didn't all just go to a funeral, but we're all experiencing some things that I think are making us all move just a little bit slower. So giving a little grace is valuable there. Letting someone know that they're heard. If they're giving words around depression, or if they're giving words around anger, let them know that they're heard, that you hear them. I hear you. I hear how much that hurts. I hear how angry you are. I hear how sad you are. Stay grounded in the truth if you can, presenting facts in a compassionate way. Like don't lose sight of your truth in the face of someone else's grief, but be compassionate. Encourage them where you can, where it's appropriate to encourage them. I don't advocate for being bright and sunshiny and cheery in the face of someone else's tears. I'm not sure that that's appropriate, but encouraging words of encouragement are good. And when they move to acceptance, or to the sixth stage of finding meaning, invite them to share their story and invite them to help others. Invite them to look around and see what they can do to help. So those are things you can do for others. I'll touch on just a couple that I have some thoughts of what you can do for yourself. Same things about giving yourself space and having places where it's safe to grieve, and giving yourself a little grace. That grief makes things take longer. I invite you to voice your thoughts and feelings. Don't keep it all bottled up inside. Ask for help where you can. Find a source that lets you stay grounded in the truth. And then allowing yourself to look forward. I think as you move towards acceptance, looking forward is probably good and healthy. And then looking at ways that you can help others from that once you move to meaning.